it going?
It's not.
A 10-minute speech on everyone's favourite feminist subject. How hard can it be?
It's driving me mad, actually. I wish I'd never agreed to do it.
Let me help. Centuries of oppression, patriarchy, women get pissed off, fight back, chain themselves to railings, go to prison, get force-fed, and then women get the vote. What's your problem?
Did you know that nearly half of men didn't have the vote in 1918?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't.
Well, so what? It's not relevant.
How can that not be relevant?
Men were in charge. That's the salient point. If the alpha male shitloads so fit to trash their own sex, it's no business of ours.
Yeah, but the 1918 Act was important because it was the first time that everyone, regardless of sex or class, was able to vote. It was the end of the aristocracy as a ruling class.
Well, yeah, one problem. No one cares. Well, anyway, before 1918, 56% of men had the vote and 0 women. That's the patriarchy, my dear. Oppression. Then, in 1918, the shitloads only gave women over the age of 30 the vote.
Yeah, but that's just because nearly 1 million young men had just died in the war. It's like, yay, I've got the vote, I'm free. Oh, wait, I'm dead. Women were not conscripted to war, and we all got the vote 10 years later anyway. Look, this is my problem. I have to say how the 1918 Act actually came about, and it's pretty obvious that it was because of the war.
If you think women could have gotten the vote without fighting for it, you're just as oppressed as they were. Don't believe history.
Look, I read the 1917 Hansard records of the debates leading up to the 1918 Act.
Oh dear, no wonder you're confused, love.
No, it's very clear. The purpose of the Act was to give the vote to men, working class men.
Are you sure?
If they're fit to fight, they're fit to vote. That's an actual quote from the debates, and it was the dominant sentiment from all parties. If the Act was primarily about giving women the vote, then why did Parliament choose to do it during the war?
Women's war work, Ducky, that's your answer.
What, you mean women working in munitions factories and the like?
Yes.
And the women had to do that because all the men were away at war?
Yeah.
The work that would normally have been done by men?
Exactly.
So you're saying that women got the vote because they spent a few years doing work that men had done forever and not got the vote?
Oh, for fuck's sake! Will you give it a rest with the men?
Look, it doesn't make sense.
Concentrate on the suffragettes, right? Women never had the vote. It doesn't matter how many men had the vote. Women never had it.
But the 1918 Act was nothing to do with the suffragettes.
Oh, God,
The Pankhursts stopped their campaigning as soon as the war broke out 4 years earlier. They put their time and energy into addressing recruiting rallies, pressuring young men to go and fight for their country. They were hardly fighting for equality on that. They started the White Feather Campaign, pressuring young men to go in and fighting in the war to do their duty for women.
Well, too right. Years of oppression, so yes, they should have fought for their families. It's only right. Anyway, you're making this too hard. Stop thinking.
Look, I just have to account for how the 1918 Act came about. After all, it's called the Representation of the People Act, not the Representation of Women Act, isn't it?
This is beginning to sound like internalised misogyny.
Whoa! You can't say the suffragettes put the issue on the table. Parliament had already passed the Married Women's Property Act in 1870. John Stuart Mill campaigned for women's suffrage in 1861, and Jeremy Bentham even earlier in 1817.
That's just lip service. It was only the suffragettes who brought activism and change.
But when John Stuart Mill campaigned in 1861, less than 10% of men had the vote. Less than 10%. I mean, that's hardly male dominance. And then on the back of that campaign, he actually went and got elected MP for Westminster.
Yeah, and what did he actually do about it?
Well, as I say, the Married Women's Property Act came about in 1870, so it had a pretty good result.
Oh, so you think women started owning property?
Not straight away, but they could have done, and guess what? The Act didn't change men's legal obligation to provide for their families or to pay their taxes.
Look, I know. All right, well, women wouldn't have got the vote without our sisters at the table.
Look, in 1906, even Emmeline Pankhurst admitted that she had a majority in Parliament. The problem was that there was a party political struggle for power which made it difficult to enact.
The suffragettes couldn't even get high-status middle-class women to vote when their male peers could.
But middle-class women were less inclined to work anyway. It was working-class women who had more of a claim for voting. They were the ones out grafting in the factory.
But who cares if they were working or not? Middle-class women owned property, so should have been able to vote. That's what the suffragettes campaigned for.
Exactly. They weren't campaigning for universal suffrage, for votes for everyone.
Well, why should they? For years and years of English law, it was property that entitled you to vote. And now, once again, women with property were being denied the vote. Patriarchy, oppression.
If men were so oppressive, then how come in the end most Liberal MPs supported women's suffrage? Practically all the Labour MPs did. Nearly half the cabinet and even 60 or so Tory MPs supported women's suffrage in some form or other, including the former Tory leader, Balfour.
There were obviously too many chauvinists in powerful positions, like Asquith, for example, to crush any attempts at female suffrage, and that's why all those bills failed.
Maybe, but was it really the bombing, the arson and the violence of the suffragettes that changed things?
Of course! Otherwise, we'd be sitting here with all the men voting and no women.
Men were the ones in the trenches. The war resulted in democracy no longer being a dirty word. Well, of course, all those women who'd fought so hard for so long finally succeeded, but it was also men who supported their fight and wrestled power from the aristocracy. The suffragettes were not fighting for that.
Don't go there, love. Don't.
We all owe our votes to those men who died in the trenches.
Don't say that. Ever. Just don't. Okay? Look, I've got to go. Okay? But here's my advice. If you don't want to write this in the way everyone's expecting it to be written, maybe you should give it to someone who will, okay? Because no one wants to hear that sexist, misogynist, anti-feminist shit.